me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Helen Virginia Baker Ames, was born in Union City, Pennsylvania on February 14, 1921. The only child of Ralph L. Baker and Ethel Carlstrom Baker. She was indeed a true Valentine's Day gift. After graduating Faulkner High School, Helen continued on to Meadville City Hospital training, where she became a registered nurse and proceeded to join the war effort. Helen became part of the Army Nurse Corps on February 1st, 1943, just before her 22nd birthday. During her 23 months of overseas duty, Helen was promoted to first lieutenant for her outstanding work serving the 74th Hospital in Africa and Italy. First Lieutenant Baker wore the Mediterranean Theater Ribbon and 2 Battle Participation Stars. Her favorite song was Stardust. When the war ended, Helen returned to Jamestown, where she married her childhood neighbor and World War II pilot Warren Ezra Ames. Grandpa already traveled through these doors over 21 years ago, and he's a man we all cherish very well. But I'm pretty sure Grandma outranked him both in the Army and at home. Moving to Wilmington, Delaware, Grandma built a loving family, including 4 children. Donna L. Moyman, Darlene Soltis, Richard Warren Ames, and Robert Bob Lewis Ames. She's survived by 5 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. Those are simple facts, but not the true story of her life. They're just a few simple stitches of life that was a much, much larger quilt. Forgive me for mixing metaphor, but over her 98 years, Grandma weaved a blanket that warmed us all. Her legacy is of family, our maternal figure, an influence that undeniably shaped us all. And it's not hyperbole to say that the good qualities we have were ultimately because of her. I don't know where I heard it or even if it's true, but psychologists say that typically there are 8 people who, when they pass, will truly affect you. Perhaps a tribute to our mark in the world is how many people count us among their 8. It's with no doubt that there are many people in this room that add Grandma to their count. Grandma Helen's my 3rd. Grandma's impact on me was obvious when she was the center of some of my first memories as a child. A couple days ago, I was talking to Chuck. We were on the phone, and he was telling me about a young man that he knows is doing very well. And he added at the end, despite the fact that he grew up from a broken home. I started to say that I can empathize with that because my parents divorced when I was very young. But then on reflection, I told him the only thing I really remember about that time was hearing that my parents were splitting up, and my thoughts were really of elation. In my mind, all I could hear was, we get to go to Grandma's. My parents may have divorced, but there was no broken home. And after I said that, Chuck paused and asked if I was going to get up and speak, and I should say that at the funeral. As I grew up, for the longest time, I never understood when people talked about holidays being stressful. We got to go to Grandma's. Holidays were fun and filled with joy. She was an amazing cook. I don't know how she did it. Her obituary talks about how she never ate a warm meal. I ate a lot of warm meals at Grandma's. No matter how many people were around the table, she would always make sure everyone had a full plate and was eating before she would settle herself in. Over the years, I recognized one of the things she would do, and I used to giggle. As the families had all their plates full and she finally sat down, she would continue passing dishes. As the dish made its way around the table, we'd all stop eating, move it along. And ultimately, the dish would land untouched back in the same spot where it started. I'm a 48-year-old man now, and they tell me I'm starting to get gray hair. I'm not. I'm a 40-year-old man, but it seems like I never really had Christmas without Grandma Helen. Growing up every year, we got to go to Grandma's. After Grandpa died, the family decided it was best not to burden her with Christmas. And at the time, my house was the closest, so everyone came there. And that continued for 21 more years. Even when Wendy, Alex, and I lived in another country. But it wasn't like she was coming to our house. It always felt like going to Grandma's. My favorite Christmas memories usually included listening to Grandma play the piano or watching White Christmas. Sometimes it was just the two of us watching White Christmas. I was going to say that I can sing every song, but I know I'd get checked on that. So instead I'll say that I know every word to every White Christmas song. It never ceased to amaze me how Grandma's houseplants were always thriving. Not just alive, but thriving. You never saw her tending to them, but they always thrived. And I guess those plants were also lucky to get to go to Grandma's. No doubt those house plants are also a metaphor for her children and her grandchildren. It wasn't always obvious, but she was always tending to us. She made everything look effortless. She always seemed to smile. Her hair never turned gray. Through the years, what I cherished most was our one-on-one conversations. Even with the full house, which usually it was, we always seemed to find time together, just the two of us. As I got older, the conversations got a lot more intimate. She would tell me stories of her time in the war, like when she went into great detail about one beautiful night on the beach with Army mates, including boys. Grandma and her friends were all settled in, scattered about the beach, expecting to be there for at least most of the night, when a tidal wave came up and washed all over them. The war was certainly a horrible tragedy overall, but like everything, she was able to find beauty in it, and she remembered it with great fondness, always seeing the best in everything. She made me feel special, telling me things about her childhood, her favorite song, and why. The 5 people in her life that truly affected her when they passed. Wendy and I had the pleasure of hosting Grandma's 95th birthday. You would think it's a bad idea to give a 94 or 95-year-old a surprise birthday party. But it was Grandma. One of the best memories of my lifetime happened later on in the evening of her 95th birthday. Most of us were there, and you can probably remember the same moment. The party had moved to our playroom, and it's a big room, and there was pandemonium going on. Grandma's children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews laughed and told stories. Her great-grandchildren played pool, climbed in the rafters, and sang karaoke. All the while, she smiled and sat quietly in the antique barber chair on the side of the room, surveying everything going on around her. She was looking on, knowing everything she saw, every good feeling being shared was because of her. That was the house that Grandma built. Grandma shaped our lives. Like caring for house plants, her actions might not have always been obvious, but her impact was certainly clear. There are 4 of her grandchildren in the room today that can equally boast that we had the best mothers. But we had the best mothers because we had the greatest grandmother. Her legacy continues in all of us. The choices we make, the kindness we share, the empathy we know comes from her heart. The blanket she wove over her 98 years continues to warm us all, a warmth that we pass down for generations. Just a couple weeks ago, Grandma was able to celebrate her first great-granddaughter's high school graduation. Alex was born 80 years and 1 day after Grandma. Like us all, the two of them also share a special bond. During that day, as usual, Grandma and I were able to spend some one-on-one time together. But this time she explained to me how happy she was to make it to that special day. She was spry, she was smiling, elated. But what she said next told the real story of why she was so happy and content. She told me how tired she was and how much she focused on making it to that moment, that now she can go. She was comfortable and at peace knowing she lived a faithful life and was going home. I didn't tell anybody at the time, but I knew what she was telling me. So I wasn't surprised when Mom called a couple days later. Wendy and I were able to visit her one last time the night before she died. Grandma was weak, and she couldn't move or speak at all, but her blue eyes continued to sparkle, and she smiled when she saw us. She knew everything we were saying and let us know with her beautiful expressions. As we went to leave, she surprised us both by somehow garnering enough strength and breath to gaze up with her beautiful blue eyes, and she said one more time, "I love you. We love you." In the end, for all of you who share her good faith, my only wish for you is that you too get to go to Grandma's.
He's younger. I am Steve's brother. I'm Donna's son. I wrote this down. Come up. And my lovely wife. I'll try. I asked her to just be close. If I can't read it. Hopefully next reading part I'll do better. I did write it down because I knew I'd have a tough time. But I also want to start by thanking two special people. You know, Mom, you gave us great comfort knowing that Grandma was taken care of with love and support and compassion. And she's got a complete life. We all appreciate that. And Nico, for your support of both Mom and Grandma. You've always been there for us, and thank you for your gentle strength and support. And we know it hasn't always been easy. But we love you and thank you for always being there for all of us. About Grandma. She was the most special person in the lives of all that she met. To me, she was a loving grandma and a loving great-grandma. And she was an inspiration in something I strive for. So I say inspiration. I'm not saying I live up to this, but I try every day to be a kind and giving and loving person. I saw that role modeled every day, and that's who I want to be. She showed me that making a sacrifice for someone wasn't a sacrifice at all. That when you give of yourself, you actually gain. And when you pick someone up, you get strong. And she was there for all of us, and she did that for every single person in this room, probably once or twice. I never asked for anything in return, because at the end she thought it was what she wanted to do, and she gained by that. She always thought of others first, and she was a kind soul. And there are two lessons, and I've learned many lessons from her. But two lessons I thought were appropriate for today. One was one time I said, while talking about how I was blessed with a lovely family, wife and children, healthy, happy, beautiful. And I said, I'm really lucky. And she said, no, you're not lucky, Scott. You're blessed. And her point was, luck had nothing to do with this. God had everything to do with it. And I'll never forget that. I'll never say I'm lucky again. I'm blessed. And the other is when she would go and meet with visitors that came to her church, she would ask them one question, why do you do good things? And they would say, I do good things to go to heaven. And she'd correct them too. No, you do good things because you're going to heaven. And that was her discipling and being a witness for God and being an embodiment of what a saved soul looks like. She knew she was going to heaven. And we know where she is today. And that's where hopefully I can wind this up. This was meant to be 3 minutes. By saying we know where she is, where she belongs. She's at the side of God, Jesus, and our beloved family that preceded her. And I'm thankful and blessed for my time with her. And she will always be with me forever, as she will be with you all forever too. So thank you.